it was kind of natural for me to consider when I'm wearing when I go out, or especially when I visit, I don't know, certain neighborhoods where police are more likely to just profile me or look at me a certain way. And I was like, I probably shouldn't wear a tank top and shorts when I go out, because if I get killed or something, or if I die wearing this, that probably wouldn't look good. That was literally the thought that crossed my mind.
I'm Louis Cole. Welcome to the Recharged podcast. In this series, I invite fellow content creators and artists to explore exciting ways to make a difference in the world. I take my guests to visit local social good projects in my self-converted electric 1973 Volkswagen van. We have real and raw conversations about life and hear from social good heroes that we can all be inspired by. On today's podcast, our guest is Chaz Smith, a comedian, filmmaker and director. Chaz launched his career on Vine 8 years ago with a passion to entertain people with a creative, clean and unique humour. He's now built a social following of over 3 million people and wants to use this platform for positive impact. He's a strong advocate against sexual violence. He believes in authenticity, vulnerability, and that laughter soothes the soul.
Oh yeah. I don't know what it is, but when I get in front of cameras, I just like spring out.
So we've got about an hour till we arrive at the destination. And I'd love just to start off maybe with a bit of your story, your life story.
Where do I start? My life story. All right, I grew up on the East Coast, in New Jersey. My dad played in the NBA for about 10 years, and my mom was a live talk show host on BET, which she co-produced. So I grew up like really fortunate and had everything that I needed and wanted. My parents made sure I was not spoiled though. They like raised me really well, but I grew up having a lot of pressure to like live up to their expectations or any perceived expectations that I had, just because my dad was he really successful in his basketball career. He won an Olympic gold medal, and just did a bunch of other crazy stuff. My mom was amazing at her job, so growing up I would always hear from people things like, oh, so are you gonna play basketball like your dad? You're gonna be tall like your dad? You're gonna go into business like your dad? And blah, 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 all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm 12. Can I just eat ice cream and watch cartoons in peace without worrying about trying to figure my life out? Jeez,
So a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of pressure. And he really wanted me to play basketball too. So it was like coming from both, not just people, but also him, but also myself. I've always been like really hard on myself, really super critical for everything that I did. Like just had to be right and perfect. And so I played basketball for most of my life growing up because I wanted to, I guess please him, do what he wanted me to. But I realized shortly into it that I didn't ever really want to play. I just was trying to do it to please him. But I kept playing because I just wanted my dad's approval. I think that's something that most, if not all, people can relate to, But at the same time, while I was playing basketball growing up, I also found out that I really enjoyed theater and entertainment and acting and like being on stage and being able to make a bunch of people laugh or whatever. I was student body president in middle school, but the part that I liked most about it was being able to like do speeches once a semester or once a month or something like that and just have everybody's attention. I really love being able to, just share my heart with as many people as possible, in order to reach as many individuals possible, to impact people on an individual level. So by the time at the end of my senior year of high school, I decided to quit, wasn't gonna play in college, and I decided to just go into entertainment in some way instead. So that was when I made my first YouTube video way back then. And was never really consistent with it because Vine came out shortly after that. Maybe you guys have seen it before, but I did the Watermelon inside of Watermelon Vine, pronouncing things incorrectly videos. And later the Water's Not Wet video on YouTube, like other things. And that kind of just took off for me going into college. And so I kept going with that. Decided I wanted to go into filmmaking at some point. Got into NYU for grad school. But then I was like, okay, I have all this social media following. I could always go back to school. Let me focus on this. And so after I graduated, I'm giving the super condensed version. I moved out here, and
we can dive in a bit deeper.
Yeah, we will have time for that for sure.
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Yeah, and I've been out here just kind of learning what it means to be a man, and knowing that has nothing to do with what I do or trying to prove myself to anybody or even prove myself to myself, but it's just solely based on the security of my identity as a person outside of actual accolades or anything like that. Because if I didn't have any, if you and I had no followers, do you ever ask yourself like, who am I without
I went
following my videos, any of that?
I went through a huge identity crisis. Thinking about all these same kind of topics. So, interesting stuff, man. Off the back of that, I think a lot, like you said, a lot of people have this, and the last podcast I did as well, we came into conversation the approval of particularly a father figure. Mm-hmm. Was there a moment where you decided to follow your own path, and was that a difficult journey, and do you feel like you have the approval of your father now with what you're doing?
Yeah, I think he was always proud of me. He just didn't express it well, so I wasn't able to receive it. So
look at this dude.
Hat, he got a cowboy hat on.
Oh, I love his belt buckle as well.
Yeah, I'd say that he was always proud of me, like, but he just never told me directly. He would tell other people like stuff I was doing and how proud he was of me, but I'd always hear it from them, not him. I just wanted to receive it and hear that from him. But the moment when I decided to like, his desires for me were to play basketball and to go into business like he did. Felt like he kind of like guilt tripped me into playing. And we've talked about this. I've talked to him about it, so he's totally cool with me saying this. But like in 8th grade, after my basketball season in the wintertime, I decided to play tennis in the spring. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to play basketball anymore. I'm gonna try tennis. And it kind of, I remember his reaction being kind of like, oh, okay. And I just knew like, I'm not gonna get the same support from him if I were playing basketball. And so going into high school, I kind of had the same decision again. I wasn't gonna play, and then like, yeah, I just felt like if I didn't, he wouldn't be pleased with me. So I played through freshman year, sophomore year on JV, and then I was on varsity junior year. And into that year, I was like, yo, I'm still not enjoying this, but maybe if I go to a school maybe it's because I'm not good enough yet. And I realized at the end of my senior year, yo, I don't want to do this. I want to go into entertainment, potentially have a talk show one day, like my mom did. And so I remember the day that I told him that, I was sitting in the passenger seat of the car coming home from school, or we were going somewhere, I don't remember. And I was like thinking to myself in the car, how am I gonna say this to him? And I just came out and I was like, Dad, I don't want to play basketball anymore. He was like, huh? I was like, yeah, I don't want to play basketball in college. I'm done. I'm just not passionate about it. And then he just like pauses. It's like, huh? Wow. I really felt like you could have made it to the NBA. And that was the first time he'd ever said that to me.
Wow.
And so in my mind, I'm like, I started crying in the car, bro. Looked out the window, tears coming down my face. I was like, that was the type of approval I wanted this entire time. But you tell me this now after I decide I don't want to play anymore. I was just so mad.
Do you think if he had said that earlier, you might have stuck at it?
I think overall, if he was more encouraging,
yeah,
like he really cared about me playing well and being well and getting better. Like that was clear. Like after games, he would always take me on the court and show me my mistakes and how I can improve and be better. But that was like all he really did. He never, like praise and affirmation I think is so important for everybody, but especially for kids from their fathers.
Yeah.
It's like,
and there's something interesting about the generation that our fathers are in, like that. And it's interesting what you're saying before about like, you're just learning how to be a man.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something about the older generations that haven't had the same understanding of like emotional intelligence and how to communicate kindness and support, because maybe back then, and it's still like that whole toxic masculinity thing of like, if you appear soft or you're emotional, then it's feminine.
Yeah. What's so negative about that mindset is, like, first of all, just to think that we have emotions, but to think that we shouldn't is ridiculous. Like, we have emotions, we should use them, but the whole idea that like expressing yourself is a feminine thing that guys shouldn't deal with. That's why so many more, like, that's why the suicide rate is so much higher for men than it is for women. Yeah. Like,
because guys bottle things up.
Right. We think that if we share something, then we're looked at as weak. We're not, because like there's this idea that men have to be strong and just push through stuff. I don't know, I'm sure so many people have heard this, you've heard this before, but when kids fall down on the playground, dudes get hurt, and it's like, oh, you're fine, get up. Like,
or if there's tears, it's like, stop being the girl.
Right.
Like, as if that's an insult.
Yeah, where girls are like really nurtured and all this stuff. And I don't think that, I think there's a happy medium for both sides. Like, we should still teach our daughters, like, oh, you're hurt, let me like help you, nurture you, but you'll be okay. Yeah. Like, you let me know, like, what do you need? You need like how can I care for you right now? But I think the same care and the same mindset should be shared for guys, because from an early age as we're boys, we're thinking like, oh, when we feel pain, when we're hurting, whether physically or emotionally, it's irrelevant. Push through it. Forget about it. Don't express yourself. And it's like you're shaking up this soda bottle, and all this pressure is building inside until you finally snap and the cap explodes off because you never like let it air out at all. Like, we need to communicate. Communication is so important, man.
Which is probably why guys struggle more with anger and kind of violent behavior or whatever it is. Like, there's a lot of pent up emotional suppression.
Right. And my dad had a terrible relationship with his father. So I do want to say, like, to see where he's at now and how he's still growing, just accepting the fact that, he's human just like me. He's growing just like I am. And I can understand, all right, this is why, not to excuse it, but I can see why, all right, this is why you raised me the way you did. This is why you believe some of the things that you did. And I can have more grace for him with that. I don't think the world has enough grace for people to grow and understand that, like, yo, we get things wrong and hopefully we can learn from them. But like, we hold stuff against people for so long. But
and the other thing is, like, you're talking about having affirmation is something so important to help a child feel supported and loved and approved of. And something I've been like learning about is like love languages. And it's not just.
Can you name the 5 on top of your head?
Yeah. Words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, gifts, and quality time.
Yep.
So I don't think that just applies to romantic relationships, but I feel like even friends and parents and everything, and I wonder whether that was a thing as well, where like you needed words of affirmation, because I think we all need a balance of everything, but I wonder in that situation where you said you kind of knew your dad approved of you or loved you, but it was in maybe lost a bit in translation maybe.
Yeah, like we need to care for people the way that they need to be cared for. That's the key. That's what the whole like love language thing is about. It's like, I think a lot of relationships fail because one partner or both thinks that they're loving them. Like, yo, I'm cleaning the dishes, I'm taking out the trash, I'm making sure all the chores are done around the house, I'm running errands whenever you need to, I'm like getting everything done for you. Why do you feel like I'm not loving you? When the person feels most loved through touch, or through hearing like, you look great today, or I'm so happy that you're my life. Stuff like that, you know? Like, we need to get rid of the idea that that's just like, that's corny or something. It's important, man. We all have emotions and we need to express them and be loved and know how to love well. I don't know how else to explain that to people. It's so important though.
What do you think's helped you not follow down that path of toxic masculinity, or at least suppressing your kind of care and kindness and love? Because I know we've only met a couple of times, but I definitely feel that from you, that you're not putting on this facade, that you are genuinely compassionate, and I'd love to know what helped you connect with that side of yourself.
Yeah, So I think one thing that really helped was so I mentioned how like I grew up really hard on myself, partly from the like pressure that I perceived from my parents, or even got directly from them or other people, and that made me like a really judgmental or critical person, or I allowed myself to become that way because I was just so always focused on, like, I think people are critical or judgmental towards others when they feel that way about themselves already.
It's like you like projecting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I realized it was like only a couple years ago that I realized, like, oh snap, I always, like, when I walk into social settings or rooms and I recognize that I'm being judgmental or critical towards people, it's always, I can look deeper and recognize that.
Sorry, I don't have any money. Do you need cash? I have nothing. Sorry.
Are you willing to give me the water?
Yeah. Do you want some water?
Water?
Yeah. Do you want some?
Where are you from?
I'm from the UK.
Okay. Water. No, I got plenty of
You
water.
got okay.
I got ice too.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Yeah, I was saying, like, when I walk into certain social settings, it was like, it just hit me one time a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, like, and I'll have these judgmental thoughts about people that I know are not right. I ask myself, like, why am I doing this? And I realize it's because before I go in there, I'm already judging and criticizing myself and thinking about, like, what are other people thinking of me? How am I perceiving myself? How am I looking to other people? Is my, like, body posture, my behavior okay? Am I making eye contact? All these just horrible questions. And then when I started realizing, like, wait a minute, how can I feel so much more at peace and confident and calm when I'm focused on making other people feel welcome in the room. And then that's kind of helped me shift into recognizing, okay, how do other people need to be cared for? Because, like, I grew up as a pretty, very judgmental and critical person. It's still something that I gotta check myself on and work through constantly. But I know it's just because of how critical I've been on myself. And so I guess in reflecting on the ways that I've needed to be cared for myself, it's just helped me recognize like the same for other people. I think that's one answer. I don't think that's the entire thing, but that's a good question that I haven't really thought of much before.
Yeah. What question are you most trying to answer for yourself right now in life?
Ooh, Louis coming with the heat, bro. The first question that came to mind, I think there are others that I've been trying to answer, but the first question that really came to mind for me was, does God really care about my desires? So I don't think we talked about this before, people, or to share with other people. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus, and like I grew up going to church, and I really believe I knew God from a really young age. But I grew up with this idea and mindset that, like, I always needed to work for His approval, which I think I projected directly from my relationship with my dad. Like I had to earn His pleasure, and, like, okay, I'm safe, I'm secure in you, but do you like me? You know, like, do you really, like, care for me? Are you pleased with me? Are you proud of me? You know, those types of questions. And so I grew up with this mindset of, like, being a servant of God before I was His son or His child. Like, there's this concept that's talked about where, like, we're adopted into God's love, like, as His children. Like, the first time a mother looks at their child after giving birth to him, like any good mother, like, I just imagine, or I've heard stories of people saying, like, yo, I've never loved anybody or anything this way before, and you don't even really know them yet. They can't do a thing for you. They can't do anything for themselves, but you love them and you care for them and you're pleased with them just because they're your kid. As they grow up, that doesn't change. For any good parent, they're gonna continue to love their kid in that way. Of course, there's gonna be times as they grow older, toddlers are gonna have temper tantrums, teenagers might have their rebellious phases, adults once they become adults, they're gonna like maybe not talk to you as much or something, or look at work as more important than their relationship with you, but you still love them no matter whether they're like doing things that please you or displease you. And that's what I've had to like learn, and the question I've been answering in my, like the biggest question I've been answering, that God loves me and is pleased with me despite and no matter whether I'm like doing everything right or messing up horribly and making bad decisions. Like, he cares about me and my desires just like any good parent cares about their kids' desires.
Yeah. I had a pretty incredible pivotal moment in my life. I also grew up Christian, and I think that's probably a question a lot of people ask, is like, am I doing what I should be doing? Like, is there a path for me that I'm missing? And a good friend of mine that kind of mentored me really opened my eyes to this concept that God isn't out there sitting on a cloud. I mean, I was already understood that concept, but it was almost this external, like, there's this force or entity that I need to figure out, communicate with somehow, but then also believe that God lives within us, that God is in our heart. So if I'm in tune and practice being in tune with what is my, it's not my kind of shallow desires, but what is my deep down, what is my heart saying deep down? Because I feel like that's where I'm hearing God from. It's not like my heart is opposed to God's will, and maybe I can follow my heart from a deeper perspective. So really choosing the things that I really deep down want to do, because I believe maybe that is kind of what I'm meant to be doing. And the grace there, or the kind of there's like that level of like figuring out our path, if we do believe there's like a path for everyone, is part of that journey. So like the prodigal son in the Bible, like part of him coming back was maybe having to walk that path of choosing to do the things that he thought he wanted to do, and then he hits the dead end and he's like, oh, this actually isn't what I want. Which is kind of crazy, and I don't think everyone should follow that path of just doing whatever you want and then figuring, trial and error, because I think we can learn from each other and wisdom, but it did feel really freeing to think of that, because I'm like, okay, now knowing that there's this unconditional love and there's this freedom to figure that your journey out, there's less pressure of like, oh, what if I make a mistake or do the wrong thing or choose the wrong path? And that was amazingly liberating for me. Something I've been thinking about a lot is, I do believe that we should try and create a fair world where there's real justice and we find inequality together.
Absolutely.
But often if you're constantly, I mean, with bigger issues and bigger injustices, I do think we need to be fighting for that. When it comes to small day-to-day things and like scenarios where you feel like hard done by, or that's not fair, I think often living life like that can just end up making you resentful, bitter and angry, and there's this idea that forgiving people, for me, might be the better option. Whereas, and it's interesting because I feel like people will lean into one or the other more, like, no, I'm fighting for fairness and everything, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. But anyway, I just thought that's an interesting thing.
I totally agree. That's something I've been working through over the past couple of weeks too, like realizing a lot of things I've been holding on to, things I haven't forgiven people for, and things that I like, that I've wanted to release and just be free of, and not think about every time this person crosses my mind or I see them on social media or something. And then being able to forgive myself as well for things that I know I did wrong and how I was just like a jerk or self-centered or self-righteous, whatever it might be. But I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but I don't remember who said it first, but not forgiving somebody is like drinking poison
and
expecting them to die.
I love that saying.
Or even if you don't want to hold on to forgiveness, it's like, what's difficult about it is like, I think sometimes, or a lot of times we do really want to forgive, but it's difficult because sometimes forgiveness is just, or most times forgiveness is a process and it takes time, and we got to be patient with ourselves and kind with ourselves for it. Like knowing that I want to let this person go, but sometimes people have wronged us really terribly and caused a lot of trauma and pain. And we want to get to the point where we're free from it, but it might take a while to get there.
This is a tough question. You can answer it as deeply as you want, but what do you think has been one of your biggest failures in life, and how have you overcome that failure?
Biggest failures.
I would say mistake, but I think failure is a better word. In your eyes.
There was just like this long period of time when I first moved to LA, stretching like a couple years where I thought I knew what was best for somebody like that I was in community with. And I thought I knew I was right, and just so sold on my beliefs that I tried to like pretty much force myself and my ideologies on them and really hurt them in some major ways while still thinking that I was right. And it's taken me, I don't want to go into details, but it's taken me a while. It took me a while to realize like, oh, hold on. Not only was I wrong, but this person was also right in a lot of ways. And I started to realize, like I said, how much of a jerk I was. But then after that came the process of, like I said, forgiving myself and recognizing, okay, at the very least, I was doing what I believed I knew was okay. And that's even still a shaky line to walk, because there are times where...
Like your intentions were good.
Yeah, but I mean, like, good intentions don't always make for good impact. You know, like that was one of the hardest things for me, because I really believed my intentions were good. But when I really reflected and looked inward, I realized that I had skewed motives as well in trying to show the person what was going on. And the more I realized I was wrong, the more I beat myself up, and the more I just hated what I did and felt shame for it and guilt. And it's taken a while for me to let go of that and realize, you know what? It's in the past. And I reached out to the person, I think at least twice, to tell them like, yo, I apologize for this. I did X, Y, and Z. But still after that, I couldn't get over it because I wasn't willing to accept the full picture of how I had messed up. There were still parts of me where, in my pride, I wanted to be proven right, or at least for them to admit the little area that I was right about. And like, that's not cool. As long as we stay prideful, we're not gonna be able to forgive ourselves or be able to forgive others and let go of the past and just release people.
Okay, I want to move on to talk about, obviously we dived quite quickly into deep conversation.
Straight into the 12-foot water.
What do you think? Well, I guess this is a multi-part question. Firstly, you're known for comedy and entertainment. Where do you feel like the challenges have been for you with, I guess, connecting that with this more compassionate side of you that wants to see justice in the world and wants to see people feeling loved and all of the things you stand for, when it becomes more kind of shallow, silly entertainment, which I'm not saying is bad at all. Where do you think the balance is in that? And also, have you struggled at all, and I'd love to hear if you have, with the fame, the social media side of stuff, have you ever gone through periods where you felt lost with it all?
Absolutely. I still, to answer your first question, I still have struggle with and kind of wrestle through where just having cohesiveness on my platform, with the influence that I have. The way that I like to think about it, something that's really helped. Well, first let me share where where it's been a difficulty, just to relate to people better. So when I first started on Vine 8 years ago, what the frick, dude? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
You've been 8 years on social media,
man.
Being an influencer.
That's weird. That's weird. That is a long time for doing anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so I started on Vine, just scrolling through for hours, just watching them, cracking up. Oh my gosh! I remember the first year that Vine came out, and it still had its rough edges. There were some Viners that I thought were so funny. They're not doing anything now, man. Those are some of the funniest. Oh my gosh. Okay, enough of the nostalgia trip. When I started off, I was just watching for fun, and then finally on my prom night or prom day, I just decided to make some. Just being. I've always enjoyed being goofy. My parents are both really goofy, have funny senses of humor. And so it was just a way for me to express myself. But I didn't really think twice about it. I never really thought of having an influence from it. I remember when I got my first 100 followers, I was so hyped. I remember exactly where I was and who I was with. I was so excited about that, just from making some goofy, silly videos. But within a month and a half of starting, I made the Watermelon Inside a Watermelon Vine. And after that, my account really started to take off, and by the end of the summer, between May 1st or something when I started, around that time, and I want to say July, middle of July, coming to August, I had 300,000 followers, which is that's a huge jump anytime, but especially for back then. With TikTok, it's a lot easier to grow, but that was huge, to the point where people were starting to recognize my dad because of me rather than the other way around, which was totally new to me.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh, he was in your Vines?
No, I don't think he was in them at that point, but maybe he was. I don't remember. But usually it was oh, you're the NBA player's son, but then it became, oh, you're the Viner's dad. I thought that was just awesome. Silly. But the issue started happening for me and it was already underlying, it just wasn't tested yet. When I started to because I mentioned before, that desire for affirmation that I had, and this started to surface and show itself once I had this following, and I realized my mind started to become geared towards results and numbers and followers and growth, where if this video performs well, that has something to say about my identity and how well I'm doing. So then if the next video doesn't, that means, oh, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Oh, dag, I'm not good. Oh man, I'm getting in my feelings and now I don't want to create anymore at all. And I've gone through cycles like that so much over the past 8 years. It's only been very recently that I've come to the point where it's I'm doing this for individuals on an individual level. I want to reach as many people as possible, but for the sake of impacting individual people's lives, I'm really believing more and more, if one person's life is transformed through what I'm able to share through just this podcast, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like it's really easy to disconnect from individual people in an audience.
Yeah.
And translate it to us as just some kind of numbers game.
Yeah. So to answer the question that you asked initially, as a starting point, I think if I'm doing that, if I'm able to serve people well and through what I'm creating, then that's in the way that I'm created to, that I'm purpose to. And I think I'm my purpose is to share joy with people, whether that's through laughter or through giving people an inner joy, a peace. There's a surface level joy and happiness, then there's a deeper I can breathe. Wow, what he said, I did not know I needed to hear that. Like those types of things. And that changes from season to season, year to year, whatever it might be. But as long as I'm doing that and not focused on pleasing people, then I'm good. Like, I think a really dope analogy is, you know, if somebody has a passion for cooking food, they love cooking because they love cooking, right?
Yeah.
If it turns into a business where they're able to serve people and not only they're getting fed, but the people are enjoying food, then that's a bonus. Like, I'm serving food. If I had a restaurant, let's say, because it's just so notable all over the world, McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
People come to McDonald's expecting fast food. Imagine if one day McDonald's was like, hey, here are all these organic vegetables. People would be like, what? Like, okay, yeah, the vegetables are organic and they're a good thing and they're healthy for people and everybody needs that nourishment. But if you're expecting McDonald's and you don't, when you go to McDonald's and they're not serving McDonald's, then you're gonna be mad, right? So even though it's my platform and I get to choose what I share, it's still also important to consider, what do people, without not in like trying to please people, not like that type of mindset, but just still trying to consider to an extent, what do people want and what do they need? Like, what am I like, I guess, made to create or share with them, you know? And how can I even, in the best ways possible, marry laughter and depth?
Yeah, which I think is the interesting thing. So I feel like comedy is great because I think we underestimate how important laughter and smiling and just having that relief from how heavy the world can be sometimes. We underestimate how valuable that is, and I'm sure you've had this as well, but I had a viewer of mine come up to me, and I don't do comedy, but I do, you know, historically a lot of my vlogs have been travel and exploring the world, and it's all been from, not, you know, occasionally I'll tackle or talk about important issues, but a lot of it's very just fun, you know, my whole channel's Fun for Louis, so it was like fun activities, just exploring beautiful places, you know, and they said that they were a nurse in an kind of A&E, like accident and emergency. They had really, really heavy days where they would be dealing with people dying and all of these crazy things. And they would come home and watch my vlogs to decompress, unwind, and just be, you know, see a beautiful side to life. And in the same way, I feel like people do that with comedy and needing that kind of fun side to life. I also, though, think it can be so clever when you can use comedy to tackle important issues that people would be closed to otherwise, because people don't choose often to like listen to people talking about heavy issues. I feel like there's some comedians that really, as well as making light-hearted, fun, silly stuff, manage to tie in political commentary or commentary on like injustices going on. Have you, do you find that you can do that, or is that a struggle for you to like talk about issues with your kind of comedy?
I try my best to just like let stuff flow.
Yeah.
It's whenever I try to force something, it usually doesn't turn out well.
Yeah.
So if I feel like something just comes to me, it clicks and it works, I'll go for it. Like, or at least if it's not comedy, at least trying to share a difficult topic in a lighthearted way. Because the topics themselves are heavy enough for people.
Yeah.
You know, I think people believe that in order to communicate well to people about a heavy topic, that you too have to be heavy and like have a serious air about you, and that's not true at all. People are able to, that's why storytelling is so beautiful, because it packs messages. You're able to pack a message into something that's digestible and entertaining for people, you know, and easy to digest.
What people love and this whole era of anyone being able to become an influencer or a YouTuber or whatever you want to call it, it's beautiful because anyone potentially can. There's the, it feels like this very, accessible. Accessible. Anyone's got the opportunity. It doesn't matter where you're from, your background, as long as you've got a smartphone or a camera or whatever, like you can build a huge audience. It's different to traditional media where you're, even like you're saying, your mum's come from this background of having a show and being a presenter, or traditional celebrities or musicians and movie stars. It's a bit detached from sharing the rawness of our lives, whether it's you doing funny like comedy moments in your bathroom or like someone vlogging their life. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's a beauty in it.
It's raw.
I think that the dangers I've seen, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, is where have you, I don't know how to word this, but did you watch The Social Dilemma?
I haven't yet.
Oh, bro. Okay. I advise it, and I was putting it off because I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this because it's this is my life in a way. But I feel like because it's still in some ways like the Wild West, like I feel like social media in terms of human history has been like 10 years really of like proper social media. Maybe a bit more, maybe 15 years. I think Facebook was it 2006, 2007, something like that.
6 or 7.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's been maybe 15 years.
If you want to count MySpace, we could go back like, or what was it? Friendo? I never was on it.
But in terms of this like mainstream adoption of this concept of continually scrolling and watching other people's lives and feeds and this continuous barrage of content at the touch of our fingers, I feel like there's a lot of concern that there's like, I don't know, I feel like right at the beginning we talked about like suicide rates, and particularly with men, but I feel like suicide rates, depression, anxiety is kind of skyrocketing in this up and coming generation like Gen Zs. And how do we harness social media platforms for good and create an environment where it's less toxic, where people aren't feeling like this idea of comparison? Like I'm thinking about like Instagram models and content online, or even like when you post, and I used to do this a lot, like how great my life is, like I'm doing all these amazing things, I'm traveling the world, and I sometimes feel like, am I just depressing people? Is this actually inspiring?
I literally wrote a caption about that.
Yeah, is this inspiring? Yeah. Is this actually influencing people in a good way, or am I actually depressing people?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I have so many thoughts about all those things, man. One thing that's coming to mind is something my friend told me. His family's from South Korea, and he said apparently, I never really like dove into like research this myself. I really just took his word for it because I trust him and his personal experience. But he said that in South Korea, they had forms of social media like they were about like 10 years ahead of the curve on America in terms of social media.
I believe it, yeah.
And he said that the suicide rate increased directly with the correlation of social media growing and its presence growing in South Korea. So I think I don't want to say it causes depression, because like we ultimately make the decisions to get on our phones and be on social media and all that. I think it's just it can easily be an unhealthy way for us to express ourselves because we're looking for affirmation, or we think lesser of ourselves than or think lowly of ourselves. So then when we see somebody else who appears to have success, we compare ourselves and think of ourselves worse, and of course we just allow our emotions to sink into these lies where there's nobody who has everything all together and whose life is just smooth and they're just chilling all the time. Like, that's not true. Everybody is tempted to covet somebody else's life or belongings at some point. Some of the we all know this, but we don't really understand it, but some of the richest people in the world are some of the most depressed people in the world.
Yeah.
Because they have everything that they've wanted, and now they're like, dang, what else is there? I'm still not happy yet. I'm still not satisfied.
I heard an amazing study the other day that said birds, and I'm assuming like being around birds, bird song, and being around like a diversity of nature and wildlife. The study shows it actually brings the same, if not more, levels of happiness as money does.
Wow.
It was so fascinating to me. I kind of laughed at myself. I was like, oh my gosh, like we spend our entire life, most people in the Western world, kind of chasing money. I'm kind of diving into a whole other thing now, but it made me curious to like, what do we buy into as a Western society of like what happiness is, what fulfillment is, and whether that's like idolizing people on social media, wanting to have their life, their wealth, especially in LA here, like a lot of influencers really are flexing with their Lamborghinis and living in the Hollywood Hills, and I just feel like, you know, and there's people doing, you know, more productive. Oh, there, this road's closed. Okay, I have to go to the next road. Yeah, there's people that aren't doing that, but I think the thought for me is like, what are we modeling and educating and teaching this next generation about where true happiness comes from? And I think my advice with the whole kind of feeling depressed by your social media feed, it's sending me this way, would be, if you're consuming some content and after you've consumed it you feel bad or sad or, I don't know, depressed, maybe unfollow that person or at least mute them. And I found myself doing that. And you can choose to follow accounts that give you, you know, that make you feel great after consuming stuff. And it could be just fun, silly comedy like that. I actually watch a lot of that on YouTube.
All my YouTube suggestions are like, most of them are like 30-second videos of just random events caught on camera where somebody slips and falls or an animal does something stupid. Like, that's, the other half is like anime, but.
So we're arriving now, and I deliberately didn't want to give you too much context of where we're arriving, but it's this amazing woman called Miri who has set up this like refugee support organization for refugees coming into the US. So I'll let her, all over? Yeah, so all over the world. I'll let her share this story a bit more. Yeah, so we're just gonna hang out with her for an hour, kind of hear her story, what she's up to, maybe help a little bit, get some packages ready for some refugees.
Today we are visiting Miri Whitehill, founder and executive director of Miry's List, a non-profit organisation that provides a mechanism for people to directly help new arrival refugee families with the incredible challenge of resettling in the US. Miry's List helps new arrival families connect with caring people, basic necessities, and services that make this process less isolating and less intimidating. Since 2016, Miry's List has supported over 700 families who have come through the Federal Refugee Resettlement Programme from countries including Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. The number of forcibly displaced people around the world has skyrocketed since 2010, growing from 41.1 million to 82.4 million as of 2020. The United States has a long, proud tradition of giving families fleeing war and persecution a chance to rebuild their lives in safety. The US government will aim to resettle up to 125,000 refugees in the next 12 months, which will mark a 733% increase from the historic low 15,000 person ceiling former President Donald Trump set before leaving office. Although organisations like Miry's List provide an incredible service, on a national level, there needs to be more work done to expand lawful pathways for protection and opportunities. Let's push for better support and services to receive people.
Miri. Hey.
I'm Louis, this is Chaz.
Miri. Hey. This is good.
Perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Cool.
You have a nice smile.
Thank you.
That's something we don't get with masks nowadays. It's hard to see the smiles.
Just the smize.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your story, really.
Well, Miry's List is a 4.5-year-old nonprofit organization. We work with families who are resettling in the United States as refugees. Most of our families come from countries like Syria and Afghanistan. A lot of them served the US military in their home countries and got their refugee status because of that. The vast majority of people in our program are parents and kids, so ages 0 to 18. And we help these families from the day that they arrive with things, people, and programming to help them to just get the basic necessities for starting out in a new country. I mean, they're moving oftentimes with 5, 6, 7 little kids with a couple suitcases. Like, you have to leave a lot behind. And so, what you're seeing around us are some of the supplies that go in our family welcome kits. And, in addition to that initial welcoming, we're also sticking with the family it's a year-long program. And so we're helping them to get access to a supportive community system that they can rely on. A lot of these families, they're coming from communities that were very, very close-knit. Often they were living in multi-generational households, and they had cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and then they have to leave all of that behind. And then, besides just leaving behind their stuff, they're also leaving behind their culture, their language, their children's and their own educations and careers are put on hold for like multiple years just to get through the migration system. And then when they get here, and just by the way, just to give you some background on how the resettlement system in this country works, the State Department oversees all refugee resettlement in the United States. They license 9 resettlement agencies to respond when families arrive. Those agencies are there for the first 90 days. Now, Miry's List, we're not a licensed resettlement agency. We are working with the families. We represent the community, and so we're the neighbors. And we're working in addition to that federally funded system that's there to help refugees when they arrive.
You started this yourself, or was it co-founded, or?
So I am the founder, and I'm also the executive director, and our team is now 11 people on staff. Most of the people who work at Miry's List have graduated from our program. Our meetings are like the United Nations. We have a board of directors. We work with hundreds.
So the people that you employ are refugees that have resettled?
They have lived experience coming through the federal refugee admissions program in the United States. And it's important because what it means is that we're not only representing American people who have been here for generations, we are representing people who got here this year.
What was the origin story like? What got you into this? Like, were you always passionate about like refugee resettlement?
Not at all. I used to work in advertising. I was taking a break from my career to raise my kids. At the time that Miry's List began, my youngest was 5 months and my oldest was 3. So I was very busy with like a newborn and a toddler. And I was introduced to a family who had a baby who was the same age as mine, who had just moved to LA from Syria. They were living in Azusa, so 30 minutes from here. And I was introduced to them because my friend who had met them through her church, She was like, oh, you have a baby who's 5 months. I know somebody else who has a 5-month-old baby. Maybe she can help to, provide some of the stuff that they need. And they needed, basic childcare supplies, like a chair for the baby, a mattress for the crib. And that's what led me to meeting them in their home. And once I was there, I could just kind of look around, and I saw that their house was just not set up to be functional for their family. They had this baby, but also they had 5-year-old twin girls. So there's 3 little kids, and mom and dad. And they were living in this 1-bedroom apartment that was just not equipped. It wasn't set up to be comfortable, safe or comfortable. And just because they needed things. And so, I didn't have any formal training in refugee resettlement. I did not study this in school. I have a marketing degree. But this was, meeting one family, seeing what their living situation was like, being in this country 3 weeks later. And I was like, why don't they have towels in their bathroom? Like, why do they still need a crib mattress 3 weeks later? That doesn't make sense to me. So we walked around their apartment, and I had a notebook in my bag, and I called my friend who speaks Arabic, and he was our interpreter on FaceTime, and he convinced them to be real with me. And it's so funny because that friend, I met him when I lived in Israel years ago. He's from Nazareth, and this family, they're from Syria, and they lived in Jordan while they were waiting for resettlement. They didn't know each other. They're not from the same place at all, but there was something about them speaking the same language that allowed them to really open up to him in a way that they just would not have been able to do with me. And he was just talking to them like a family member, and he was like, listen, I can vouch for her. She just be real with her. And we walked around the house, opened every cabinet, looked at every shelf, and made a list. It was 42 things that they needed to get their home set up to be functional.
Just for basic function.
Garbage bags.
Yeah.
Big things like furniture, but also toiletries and a laptop for finding a job. And, the dad in that family was a journalist in his home country. And that was, part of what led them to being refugees. That's, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was, the situation that I found that family in is quite typical for families that are coming through the resettlement system. It kind of undid this, I had this assumption that families coming here as refugees, they're covered, that the government has them covered. And that's just not at all what the reality is. And I've just learned that through so many more families since then. Actually, we enrolled our 570th family last week.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's been not even 5 years.
Huh. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
What would you say, you're just so willing to help and serve people. Would you say that there are any experiences that you had when you were younger that kind of prepared you for this? Because from the story you told, it seems like you kind of just dove into it, which you did, but I don't think it all just started right there, right?
Yeah, a lot of people wouldn't do what you did.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking.
Well, after I made that list, I didn't go to Target and buy everything myself. I was on a single income at the time with 2 little kids. I couldn't afford it. I went home, posted on Facebook the list. I typed everything into Facebook.
And that's where Miry's list came from, the name.
That was the first list. I didn't, we didn't call it that at that time, but my neighbors, friends, family, people that I worked with 10 years earlier were showing up at my house with their car full of stuff from Costco. And we were able to get everything on their list donated within a few weeks. And I think it was, I was at a time in my life that, most of my day was witnessed by people who could not speak. I was with babies all the time. And I was married at the time. I'm now divorced, but I didn't have a partner. I didn't have anyone there with me to experience what I was experiencing, to have empathy for me, to make space for me, to be an emotional support person for me. And I remember sitting in that family's apartment. We were sitting on the floor, we were eating Cheerios and bananas because it's what they had. And in Arabic culture, you always serve food. And we had tea, of course. And I was just looking at this family who literally didn't have a mattress in their baby's crib, but I could see the love and support and functioning and happiness there that I didn't have that in my house, and it had been a long time since I felt that amount of safe and comfort in a family. And so I was just like, I got that fulfilled in a way just being there. And I was like, I want to do what I can to help, because I had a house full of stuff. Like, the next thing I did was I drove home and I picked up my spare crib mattress. There's a crib mattress right behind you. We keep a spare just in case. You know, I went back to their house with that mattress, and I was just like, these folks have solvable problems, and I can help them with that. I have to, because my problems, they were not solvable for me at that time. You know, but the funny part is that in the process of meeting and getting to know that family, and then many more families after that, it helped me to get the confidence, the courage, the strength that I needed to change my own life for the better, and like also to be a courageous parent, to be able to make a decision that you can't go back from, like, because you want to look after your kids. And I was like, all right, I've never been a refugee, but I can understand that, and that is what I'm up against here. And, you know, I've been now 2 years living here with my kids, and you know, Miry's list has grown so much, and we've been able to help a whole lot more families, and also I've been helped. And I think that, like, that was part of it. It was like, I really needed to have a support system for myself, and then all these people came with me in my life. They were like, we want to do that too. And I was able to, like, stop focusing on this impossible mission of changing someone else, and really just put my time and love into the things that were most rewarding to me, which was helping families, exposing my kids to people from different places and different languages and amazing food, and building something that can help people. And we did that.
Amazing. So inspiring to hear, like, that you just took that opportunity to help, because I feel like we live, I don't know, I guess the world's always been like that, where there's like, there is compassion, but there's also this side of humanity that is cruel and disconnected from just the humanity of it, of helping people. And I feel like when there's fear involved, and you know, maybe a lot of this is just what you see in the media, but I feel like there's a lot of resistance to refugees, or it might be like Islamophobia because of certain people coming in, or build the wall, people coming across the border. Like, I feel like that this is so needed, and how you talked about, like, feeling connected because you could relate, and you almost see yourself in those, you know, in the families that you've only just met. And I think what you're doing is creating a more compassionate world, and hopefully people listening or watching can feel inspired to do the small step of asking people what they need, or, you know, how to support others. And have you got any advice on, like, what those small steps could be for people that, you know, it might be the smallest thing?
You can start by writing a letter. We collect letters every single day from people who are sending welcoming messages to resettling families. That anybody of any age can do that. Also, if somebody is watching this and they're like, I want to get involved, I want to help. Well, Miry's List is now a web platform. You can send a housewarming gift to any of our families through our website, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can write a gift message, and it's going to go directly to the family. So you can send a laptop to a resettling student. You can send a blender to a resettling mom, or a Cuisinart so she can make hummus. There are, you know, things as small as baby socks, and you brought socks today.
Yeah,
so yeah, we're going to pack some of those into the kits that we make. And, you know, that is such a small, attainable step for anyone that wants to get involved directly. And then, you know, that's kind of one-to-one, family to family. For people who are like, how do I help Miry's List? How do we make more Miry's List in the future? Well, first of all? That's a really important question, because the Biden administration is about to increase refugee admissions by anywhere from 4 to 8x, and it's going to happen this year. Wow. And then it's going to really kick off October 1st when the new fiscal year starts. And so we are preparing ourselves for increased demand. Right now we enroll 25 families every month in our program. That's not going to be enough for 2021. That said, we're a small organization with 11 people. We're going to, as many families as we can help, it's going to be enough. But we would like to increase our capacity to maybe help 40 families a month next year. So supporting Miry's List with financial contributions of any amount. You know, a lot of people give us $10 a month, and it really makes a difference for us. We are community-based. We do not receive funding from the government. All of the funds from Miry's List are pretty much coming from individual people and a small number of companies. The supplies that you see around here are donated to us by people like you and moms groups and Girl Scouts who do collections for us, troops and companies. And so, like, as you can see, Dr. Bronner's hand sanitizer, they provide us with soap and hand sanitizer. We have masks. We have a lot of stuff that's donated from companies, but it's about half-half. So that's how we're able to make sure that there's continuously a lot of people involved. We're going to pack a welcome kit for a family. Okay. And then also we're going to purchase a laptop and 2 tablets for a family. That's we're going to do that online, but the welcome kit we're going to pack here.
Is it just California you're doing, or?
We're actually working with families in 20 states.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, because a lot of what we do is online. People can just send anywhere that Target delivers is a service area.
Amazing. I think it's really amazing as well that even in the position you were in when you started all of this, of being a single mum and raising 2 kids, which I can't even imagine, you know, how difficult that is in the first place, that you were still so willing to like give yourself and time and effort into like helping other people, you know.
I mean, my kids were with me doing everything. Like every time I went to drop off supplies at a family's house, they were with me. And so it wasn't really something that I had to do in addition. It was just something I was doing with them. And now my kids are 8 and 5, and my oldest could tell you what languages they speak in Afghanistan, and he has he knows all about Syrian food, and it's, I'm really happy that they've been exposed to this as just part of their life. They understand what helping people means. They know what all of these supplies are for, and also, like, it's important that we talk to kids about why people move around the world as refugees, because the resettling kids that arrive here, they end up in our schools like everybody's kids. And so often kids are the first line of welcoming for a resettling 8th grader, for example. So today we are going to pack a welcome kit for the Nazari family from Afghanistan. They got here in November 2019. They are a mom and dad with 3 kids, a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old. The youngest is a little girl, and the middle one is a boy. And let's see, Dad he worked with the U.S. military in Afghanistan. He is doing ESL classes online, and he's trying to improve his English. They miss Afghanistan and the time that they were spending with their family and friends, specifically at picnics and having Afghan food. Their urgent needs are a phone, a laptop, and a sewing machine. And so we are going to be packing their welcome kit, and then also my team is going to be making them a wish list that's going to live online where they can get those bigger things like the sewing machine. Yeah. So here's a box. That's for you. And if you could please write on it, "Welcome Nazari family," and I'll tell you how to spell it.
So I write on the side, top?
Anywhere. And then we're also going to put a number, but right, welcome. And then the number that you'll write is 566, because we often have people with the same last names in our program. Yeah. So their youngest is 4, so we don't need to pack diapers for them, so that's good. I often have people pack these kits with their little kids, and the decorations are very much loved.
Or crooked emoji.
I like that.
I think emojis like translate beyond languages, which is good.
With the first 30 families, we primarily communicated through emojis because we didn't speak the same language. So we were using Google Translate and butchering things, And then emojis, you always know what this means when you emote. Yeah, so yeah, that's perfect.
Cool.
All right, so we'll go from the back and we'll work our way forward. Oh, why don't you grab the socks, because those will be perfect for the dad. Dad is 48, mom is 39. Stick that in the box. That's perfect. So we have some socks for kids too.
So have you just slowly kind of figured out how to organize stuff?
Yeah, I definitely did not go to school for this part. I'm not an organized person by nature, but I have
Me neither.
worked on it. I have learned. Oh, see, this is so cute. It's a nice top for the littlest. Let's see what else.
Shirts.
Yeah,
Those are some
for
the little ones. I know. So, all right, we got some shampoo.
Nice brand. Shampoo and conditioner.
Garnier
Shampoo and
Fruity.
conditioner.
It's amazing the things that you take for granted that you just use every day and you don't even think about it, like garbage bags
Right?
and soap and
You know, like this dad that I talked to yesterday, who was like so excited about that welcome kit. He wasn't talking about the stuff that it was in there, and like he was like very thankful for that. But he was like, we felt so loved when we opened it, because like we read all those cards. He said he expected his wife to laugh, but she cried just from happiness from after when he was reading the letters to her.
So it's not just the practical help, but it's even the actual thought of like that people are supporting you.
Yeah, because that's literally the opposite of what it feels like to be a refugee and to migrate in that way. Like you have to be invisible. You have to like take what you're given. You lose this sense of agency that comes with making survival decisions.
We've got socks, tops, hand sanitizer, soap.
These are the really nice kind.
Cozy, huh? It's a cozy one.
Blanket.
Can you fit that in there?
Yeah. Almost filled up. I think we can put a bit more in.
It's like Tetris.
Yeah.
Are you having fun?
Yes, I like to try to organize.
What is this? Toothbrushes.
Toothbrushes. More masks. We have.
Like Miri said, if you're watching and want to donate things, like just simple things like this, then we'll link everything in the description.
Having the lists online is really cool. Like just being able for people to be able to fulfill them on their own. Does it work kind of like I think when people get married, they do like wish lists.
That's exactly
Somebody
it.
picks something, checks it off.
That is exactly it. There's some paint
Oh,
for the kids.
see, I like it. It's essential, isn't it? You need creativity, and
These
helping
look pretty
foster
nice, too.
creativity is just as essential as cleaning products.
But these are handmade blankets. We're gonna squeeze in on top. It's a welcome blanket. And then each one has a note from the person who made it that's for the recipient of it. Oh, that's a nice one. That's beautiful. So look, you see the tag on it over here? You can just read that or just, browse it, check it out. It's pretty cool.
Name, Sonia from Los Angeles. My grandparents were refugees. They fled Turkey during the American genocide in 1915 and were fortunate to find a new home in Greece. This is where my parents were born. My parents wanted better opportunity for their children, so they immigrated to Canada right after they married. That's where I was born. After too many cold winters, my family immigrated again, this time to the U.S. I've been able to live a full life and rewarding life as a result of my grandparents and parents' bravery, and I'm deeply grateful for their courage. My parents made certain that I received a very good education and supported me as I earned both a bachelor's and master's degree education. Oh, a master's degree, period. Education will be the key to your children's future. 40 years ago, I was very proud to become a U.S. citizen. I take seriously my duty to fully participate in the political process by voting at each election. When you're eligible, I encourage you to become U.S. citizens and have your voices be heard. This blanket is a very small gesture to bring you comfort as you build a new life. The U.S. is indeed a country of opportunity. I welcome you to your new home. From Sonia.
Oh, Sonia. Wow. Yeah, stitch by stitch, huh?
So can I ask what is your goal? Do you have like a goal with Miri's list?
Yeah.
Is it like a simple mission almost?
Our mission is to improve the experience for families who are resettling in this country as refugees. The way that we go about doing it, our methodology, is by involving the community of welcoming Americans who want to get involved to help their new neighbors. Can we slide this in the side? It's a book called Salam Alaikum. It means welcome.
Do you find most of the refugees originally speak Arabic?
Farsi, Arabic, Dari. These are the languages most commonly spoke by the families in our program.
What's some of the most valuable lessons you think you've learned in the last, did you say 5 years you've been doing this?
It'll be 5 years in July.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, that couldn't get any fuller, could it?
that's great.
So these are just from some people that have just wrote like nice welcome letters.
That's from people all over
Donated.
the country.
Wow.
And then these are a brochure in English and Farsi with local resources in Sacramento. And this is Arabic on one side, Farsi on the other. It's a brochure with a hotline that families can call to book a COVID-19 vaccine.
So how many of these packages do you send out in a day normally?
We send 25 per month.
Okay.
And we also send a smaller version of this that's just COVID hygiene supplies, so masks, hand sanitizer, and soap. But every family who's enrolled in our program is going to get one of those that includes, the letters, the information, and all the goodness. The hardest things to get fulfilled on a family's wish list is the higher ticket price, is the more expensive things. So like laptops, which are in super high demand. We want to make it easier for our families to get their laptops faster. So yesterday we posted this fundraiser. This is the Habibi family. They urgently need a laptop and tablets to facilitate English learning and school at home. We put a fundraiser for $350 to buy those items for the family yesterday on Instagram. The fundraiser was met within a couple hours. So I was actually able to buy a laptop and 2 tablets for under $350 that we raised.
Yeah, you're doing really cool work, Miri. Seriously.
I really, really appreciate that. And we really rely on people, being proactive and coming here and checking it out and helping. And so y'all are getting an A+ today. Thank you for coming into our space, and I hope that this is an opening, and feel free to just stay involved. We really want you here. We need you here, and there are many, many more families that need help.
Thanks so much for showing us a little window into your world and what you're doing. And I think there's something, like I was saying earlier, there's something about like this compassion and kindness that I think we need to celebrate more in the world. And highlight more, and there's a lot of negativity and there's a lot of injustice happening, but I feel like it's so heartwarming and encouraging to see like you really, just the kindness that you're showing people, and that I feel like will ripple out, and it's like contagious. People are like, oh my gosh, like this kindness and compassion and supporting other people is so rewarding. What do you think are some of the most rewarding moments you've had over the last 5 years? Is there like certain moments that you remember?
There are so many, because at every milestone that our families get to, that they are communicating back to us. We get to share in their joy. Like, that's the good part about having a really big family. Now there's more than 2,000 people in my extended Miry's List family. So it's just so rewarding to hear from them, and to hear that things are going well, and to hear that their kids are doing well, and their kids are excelling at school and getting awards and recognition. And just this afternoon, I heard from my colleague, Rafid. He was one of the first Miry's List employees. He got here in 2017, like you. He came to California. He came from Iraq, and he was one of our earliest volunteers, and then quickly became an employee as soon as we could afford it. And he's graduating from college this summer, and his school has asked him to speak as commencement speech.
That's so dope.
And it's these are the moments that I'm just like, I know we are on the right track. Like, these are all the signs, all the symbols that we know we're doing the right thing. And when individual people are thriving, that's when we can thrive as a community, or as a city, as a country, as a world. It's family to family.
Wow, thank you for doing what you do, and we'll link everything. If you want to support and you're watching or listening, like I said, we'll link how you can do that. And I just love that. I love that you see the world as one big community, because I think there's enough division and separation happening that we need to, I think the way to fight against that is just to be acceptant and support others, and Be kind.
Our slogan at Miry's List is this Ana Huna. It's on these letters behind me. I also have it on my shoes.
Oh, cool.
It's a Arabic phrase. Ana means I, and Huna means here. I'm here. That's what it means. And it's a statement of presence. It's like, it's like, I'm here for you. That's something that we say to our families. Ana Huna. Also, it's something that we want our families to be able to say for themselves, having that sense of place, that sense of belonging. I'm here. And then it's also like we roll up to our families' houses, we're dropping off some supplies, we can text them, Ana Huna, I'm here. And it's very practical in that way. So thank you for being Huna today, on this day, and just, stick with us. We have a lot of really, really exciting things coming up.
All right, take care, Miri. Nice to meet you.
Have a great day.
Bye, thanks for coming.
I forgot to show Chaz what's been driving us around. So
The battery.
check this out. So this is the motor. So this was a huge engine, right? And now this tiny little motor is what's powering.
Did you build all of this?
Yeah. No, I had no experience. Some dude was just helping me. This amazing guy he's done it before. So
Gosh, what's
Is
the
it showing me?
green
That's,
Nickelodeon slime?
that's coolant that runs through all the batteries to keep the batteries cool when it's
Yeah.
charging and under strain. And then if you look all the way under, I don't know if you can see from here. Yeah, there's like metal boxes, and I built all those custom and mounted them on the bottom. And those those have Tesla batteries in. So from a
What?
wrecked Tesla car, we just pulled all the batteries out
Oh
and then
my
stuck on
gosh.
the bottom. Yeah.
That was a whole project. I saw.
And then
I
where
didn't-
where the gas normally fills up,
Uh-huh.
it's like an electric. That's where you plug it in.
That's so dope, man.
Right, we should head back. Nice. Come on. Right. What did you think of that?
That was really nice.
She's great, isn't
She's
she?
she's doing some awesome work, and she just really cares for people, man. And to care about people whose experiences you can't even relate to, that takes a different type of just depth and compassion. That's really cool, for real.
I just feel like, especially in America, there's so much kind of division. And I think often people, I don't know, try and draw lines between where you're from, or, what skin color you are, or whatever. That creates these prejudices. And it's so refreshing to see somebody really,
Embracing other cultures.
yeah, just embracing other people, because we're just all human, And why are we drawing all these boundaries and lines, and it's an age-old problem, isn't it, with creating these boundaries, being at war with other countries. I heard a really interesting quote from my friend, a good friend of mine that I used to live with. Yeah, the quote was, every conflict in human history is because of a missed acknowledgement. If we were just really good at communicating and feeling listened to and feeling heard and supported by other people, and being able to hear and support other people, I feel like it would avoid so much conflict, whether it's like actual physical conflict like in Afghanistan or whatever, a lot of the refugees that she works with, or even in this country where it's like a lot of just political, like a conflict of views. What do you think some of the solutions are in terms of bridging the gap?
That's like a really big concept, and it's something that's going to take a lot of time, but I think that at a basic level, kind of like what you were saying before, if we're able to humble ourselves and like put down our selfishness and what we think is right, and instead just choose to love people that we disagree with, or love people that we don't like. It's easy to love people that you do like, but to love people that you don't like takes a lot. And I realized that was the reason for a lot of the conflict and forgiveness of other people and myself that I was telling you about earlier, that I've been trying to work through. I was so much more focused on being right and wanting to hear them say, yeah, you are right about that, I was wrong. Just proving myself.
And that's an ego thing again.
Yeah, it is. It's pride, it's selfishness, it's insecurity, all the above. Rather than just caring for people how they need to be cared for, or how they feel most loved. And I think the solution is to start it on an individual level, and then it spreads.
I guess it's finding the common ground, things that you do share in common, views you do share in common, and then working back from there.
Yeah, that's hard to do though.
Super hard, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to do.
There's some people I talk to, and as soon as they express a certain viewpoint, my reaction is to shut down and be like, I don't even want to speak to this person because of their ignorance or lack of compassion, or seemingly lack of compassion, their judgment of others. You know, when I feel like there's things that put me off, make my blood boil, and then I just want to walk out of the room. But I know I want to change that about myself. I want to be able to, even when I'm frustrated by somebody's viewpoints, hear them out and not get angry.
It starts with loving people and listening to them. Like just being willing to hear what they have to say and getting to know them for who they are, not what they believe.
What's your perspective as a black man in America? I mean, diving into the race thing, if you're happy to. What were your feelings last year particularly? And maybe it was, like I've heard, like last year wasn't it. It was just when it kind of boiled out from previous years. But how, you know, what's your experience as a black man? And then what do you think are some of the big things that could see a shift so our children's generation are living in a more just accepting world where people aren't judged on race?
I think three things that kind of all coincide together: stories, perspective, and representation. Or maybe in order: representation, stories, and perspective. Like we need people who represent. It's another way of saying just like diverse experiences, diversity, cultures, like being open to knowing what other people's experiences are. And I'm talking more from one side. There's of course the side where there are people who are intentionally wicked and racist and want to see the downfall of certain people just because of their physical attributes.
And do you think that is just lack of education? Lack of like...
I think it's a combination of things. I think that hate and racism towards specific people is taught for sure.
Because we're not born racist, but it's through the conditioning. Yeah,
I'd say that, because you could take a set of twins, right? You raise one in like a very, I don't know, I'm speaking hypothetically here, like a really rich Orange County neighborhood or something where all they're ever around is white people, and the only experience of like people from other cultures, or black people in particular, that they know of is what they see on TV, and most of the time what they see on TV is just, especially like especially in mainstream media, is representations of crime and just really black people from a negative perspective. And then if they're watching one singular news outlet, they're often getting a biased perspective, an extremely biased perspective there. Whereas if you put the other twin and like they grow up in the hood or just around black people, they'll get a totally different perspective, and they'll have a totally different, that'll totally shift their perspective on how they see black people as a whole. But just sitting down, talking to somebody, there's so much value in that. I think I want to backtrack a little bit. I really believe that such a major solution, not just to these problems, but just relating to people in general, is talking to somebody not because of what you know or what you do, but just talking to them for who they are, to get to know who they are, not try to change perspectives or opinions. And I've learned that like in some uncomfortable ways. But seeing different representations of people in your personal life will change your perspective, and storytelling is a powerful way to do that. In my own life, something that happened last year that really hit me is like, it was kind of natural for me to consider when I'm wearing, when I go out, or especially when I visit, I don't know, certain neighborhoods where police are more likely to just profile me or look at me a certain way. And I was like, there was a thought that crossed my mind at one point last year where I was like going out to get some food at In-N-Out or something. And this thought literally crossed my mind without me even catching it until like 5 to 10 minutes after it happened. But I was like, I probably shouldn't wear a tank top and shorts when I go out, because if I get killed or something, or if I die wearing this, that probably wouldn't look good. That was literally the thought that crossed my mind.
What do you mean it wouldn't look good?
Like it would just, what I mean by it wouldn't look good was, well, first of all, that people might look at me differently because of what I'm wearing. They might make some assumptions. And then I was concerned that if I were to die wearing whatever clothes I had on, that I'd be further perpetuating a stereotype. And that thinking is just so off in the first place. Like, that's not, I don't think that's something that you've ever thought about before. Like, and I realized like that's something that was kind of normal for me in some ways. Like, it's like I often think about trying to make myself look less intimidating around people. Like when I'm just walking down the street, I was walking through my own neighborhood a couple months ago, just taking a stroll, and this lady was, and it's in the middle of the day, this lady was it was by her car. She had the back lift gate open, and she was rearranging some stuff, and then when she saw me coming down the street, she looked, and her garage was open because she was bringing stuff back inside. She looked at me, left her lift, closed her car, locked the door, went over to the garage, made sure it went down, and just stood by it and kind of looking at me out the corner of her eye as I was passing by. And then after she saw I made it all the way down the block, she opened the garage back up again and opened up the car and continued whatever she's doing. You could say that, you know, that's just somebody trying to be protective and careful of their property. But, and this is tough, I try to speak in a way where people who don't agree with me, like, to get them to understand, but like, honestly, that, I don't see that type of stuff happening with my white friends when they're walking down the street. Like, there was an experiment somebody did where, like two friends, one was white, one was black, they both walked around the neighborhood with the same exact attire, but with no shirt on. They both got totally different reactions. Wow. So when I'm talking about perspective, a lot of the, like, just racism or prejudices that happen, like the majority of them are on a micro level, and they're driven by fear and what people see and what they're taught, or from media or their parents or their own communities. Then there's like deeper institutional racism, like have you heard of redlining?
Yeah. So
for people who don't know what that is, so decades ago, the U.S. government decided, or trying to figure out a way for people to establish generational wealth by like owning property or assets. I don't know all the details of it, but and like I don't know all the laws behind it, but basically they decided to implement some form of benefits for people to make it easier for Americans to buy and own homes and generate wealth off of that, and being able to pass it down to their kids and their grandparents and so on. However, they worked with banks to do this. And however, though, they had banks literally outline certain neighborhoods with red markers, where they would prevent people from being able to own property. Like if you said, hey, I live in this neighborhood and I'm trying to buy this home or something, they wouldn't give you a loan so that you wouldn't be able to like end up, you know, purchasing a home. And that stuff like that still happens today, but even worse, even though they stopped that practice, those same areas are still outlined and people already know just by the generational effects of outlining in those different areas not being cared for, they already know what, like, that's how hoods like came about in the US. And these are, you know, just communities that are impoverished, and people know that public schools are funded based on the tax income of the regions that people live in. So that's why public schools have far less, that's why public schools in the hood have far less are just not anywhere near as good as public schools in wealthier areas, because it's tax money that's being put into them. But if the money isn't being built up over time in those areas, then they're not going to be able to put that money into like strong public school systems. So, and there's a bunch of other implications with that practice that have lasting effects that still have not been made up for to this day. But yeah, I think that it starts with fear and just teaching hate, and then it bleeds into all other areas of our society. So yeah, my personal experience, like I said, I grew up very fortunate and like privileged because of the living that my parents made. My dad was one of, like, yeah, my dad grew up in the hood, and you could say like he made a way out for himself, but on his track team or his football team or something like that, I think it was his track team, he has a picture of like 15 different kids that were on there, and out of all of them, I think he said 3, including himself, didn't end up in prison or dead by the time they're in their 20s. And you could say that's like, well, make better choices, but like, what choices are you gonna make when you don't see representation of people doing things and letting you know that you can make it out, or giving you opportunities to even do that? Like, people in wealthy communities have so many more opportunities to get ahead in life and do things that are gonna benefit them and their kids in the future, and even have the mind to think that way. So this like institutional racism and prejudice goes so far beyond governmental and financial implications. So he was one of the very few to make it out like that.
Let's go again. Just stopped off for some ice to cool the cameras down, and some ice cream. Woo! I feel like we were talking about some really heavy topics before the camera overheated.
And it totally slipped my mind. Ice cream has that effect on me. You just forget about everything. Sometimes, sometimes you've done enough therapy, you've had enough conversations, you've taken enough naps. Maybe you just need some ice cream.
Yeah, that's true. So we've talked about being an influencer, your relationship with your dad, your faith, your experience as a black man. I think after visiting Miri and seeing what she does, it was very inspiring, and I think there's something we can both relate to, is wanting, and it's kind of stuff we talked about, but wanting to have a bigger impact on the world with our lives and our identity as like an online influencer or creator. That there's more to life than just building our own wealth or fame or power or whatever people chase after. I guess something I want to do with this podcast is kind of provoke these kind of conversations for people that are listening. What does it really look like to do good in the world, to make a positive impact? So, and leave people that are listening with some simple practical advice, because I think sometimes people feel like
doing good in the world or being involved or volunteering or whatever it is, it's a big step to do that. Whether the reality is, whilst the reality is, it's not that difficult to do good and be kind.
To just serve somebody, make one person's day better.
Yeah, what would your advice be then for people that want to do good in the world, but they don't know how? Because from what Miri was saying, there's so many people. How many people did she say? Like 170,000 people or 140,000 people or something had donated and been a part of it.
170,000.
I think people are hungry and desperate to do good and be good people. But what would your advice be for people that don't know how to start?
I say look for needs that need to be filled, particularly stuff that you care about. If you don't know what you care about yet, pay attention to the things that like really like ping your heart or maybe make you angry or frustrated to the point where like, you know, that might be something that you want to make a difference in. The stuff that frustrates us, the stuff that hurts us emotionally, I think those are good indicators for, you know, just considering, all right, this is a place that I can serve and help others. But I think the other side of it is like, it can be really easy to feel like we're never doing enough. So my advice for that is to say, don't do everything you can. Just do, because if you do everything that you can do, if everybody did everything they could do, everybody would be burned out all the time.
Yeah.
So I say instead of
Small
doing
steps.
Instead of doing everything you can, I say just do one thing at a time. Like, what's one thing you can do to make a difference? What's one thing you do to help somebody? Just start there. You never know what could come out of it. So, yeah, that's what I say.
Are there like routines in your life that have helped you be a better person?
I think people want to be able to pour out and pour into others, but it's hard to do that if you're not filled up first. So what I do is try to set aside time every morning. I recently made a habit of just getting up really early to just talk to God in the morning and just thank Him and get on the phone with other friends just to pray and get grounded and centered. And the reason why that started is actually because, like, I think the more influence we get and the higher we go, the harder it is to keep integrity in finances, in relationships, in your work, whatever it might be. And just hearing about how, dropped some ice cream on my arm, sorry about that. Hearing about how like some people or leaders have gotten to this point of like really great influence, and then you hear about them cheating on their wives, having affairs, or doing like other like pretty wild, devious stuff. I think a lot of that just comes down to like whether they were getting filled up in their personal lives or not. Because if you're not filled up at home, then you're gonna go try and get filled up and get satisfied somewhere else. And so I think that's really important for me, just filling up my tank. So then what I share with other people is an overflow of the joy that I get to receive and the peace that I have. To love people from a place of abundance.
I'd love to get back to that in my own life, because I feel like I'm often feeling burnt out and unable to be present, unable to be as much of a support to people as I want to be, because I'm often exhausted.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you couldn't be more on point with that. Like, it's so key. And if I look back at points in my life where I was more attentive to really like, it's not putting yourself first, but it's realizing that if you're thriving, it's gonna massively impact the people around you.
If you're about to run a marathon without having eaten anything, that's not a good idea. If you're about to drive a car without any fuel in it, or this without charging the battery first, it's gonna stop functioning, and it's gonna look pretty bad. Same thing with us. If we're not in a solid place, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or at least able to put down our worries, like put them aside for a second to be present with somebody, then we're not gonna be able to. And the easiest way to be present is when we're like just energized, filled up. And I am not a morning person at all, but once I got a why and recognize like, oh, this is important and I care about this and I'm willing to do this because I know that it's gonna have this effect ultimately. It wasn't like a selfish decision. It was like, I'm trying to think ahead to being married one day, having a family one day, kids, a job, a larger platform, and the only way all that stuff is gonna be healthy is if I'm healthy. Like those relationships are only gonna be healthy if I'm healthy first. Cause like, I don't know, if you gotta like this is a weird analogy, but if you got like a really clean tangerine and a moldy tangerine, and you put them together, the clean tangerine is gonna get moldy too, because the other one's moldy. It usually does. Most often, it doesn't work the opposite way when it comes to relationships. Most often. I'm not saying never, but
yeah, I struggle sometimes with finding the balance of wanting to surround myself with supportive friends that help me grow and add to my life, and then also realize that like I want to be giving into other people's lives, so making sure there's people in my life that I feel I can add into their life, even if it's not a mutual benefit to both of us. Like,
absolutely.
So there's like, and I talk to some people and they're like, no, I'm going to cut everyone out of my life that isn't benefiting me. And I'm like,
that's selfish.
I know what you're saying. And maybe for some people, maybe there's a period of that where you like are resetting, you're cutting toxic people out of your life or whatever, enable to give you the ability to recharge, go through a season. But for me, that can't be an attitude for your whole life.
Yeah.
And the idea that there's
like on long term, that's a selfish thing to do.
Yeah, and also it's not realistic, because going back to what you're saying about children, there's not an obvious benefit that your children are giving you other than the companionship and experience, but it's not like immediately they're going to be giving you energy. It's probably going to be, draining your energy. But then you wouldn't be like, no, I'm going to cut them out of my life because, I'm not benefiting from them.
I'm cutting my son out of my life because he's broken. I don't play with that.
So I think it's in the similar way. There's like roles we can take as parental or mentor roles or brother sister roles where we're supporting those around us. Yeah, and like you said, if you're coming from a place of abundance where your overflow is able to support people, that's a great place to get to in life. Because I think most people operate from a slightly more self-centered perspective, where it's like, I'm just searching for the things that I need to make me feel good. Even when entering into relationships, the amount of people that go in being like, this is what I want, not like what can I give somebody, but it's like, what can they give me? And it's good to know that there's people out there that are like genuinely generous and wanting to put others as a priority in their life.
Man, I have a relative. My dad was just telling me this morning how I didn't really know her too well, but we have a cousin who just passed away at 57, and she had a mental disability where she wasn't able to, like, by the time she was, I don't know, a fully grown adult, she had the mind of like a 10 to 12-year-old or something like that. But what was crazy is he said he went to her funeral a few days ago on the East Coast, and he's never seen so many people like who were impacted by somebody in such a way, but she had absolutely no platform in the sense that we think of it. But what she would do was like, she was just always looking to give to people with whatever money she had. She was always like writing cards and letters to people, sending gifts to people. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how much we're missing love like that. And so her funeral was like a celebration of her life and seeing how many people were positively impacted by this woman who, like, she didn't have all the talent, she didn't have all the brains, she didn't have all the accolades, she didn't like have all this other stuff that we put so much emphasis on, you know, looks or whatever. My dad said he doesn't even think she ever like even dated anybody in her entire life, but she loved people and gave to them and cared about them. And that was clear to see when she passed away. And I'm trying to connect that to what we were just talking about. I don't remember what it was. It was relevant though.
I think it was just like, it's good knowing that people put other people first.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you just shared was, and I'm sorry that she's passed away, is I guess because she was more childlike in her understanding.
Not childish, childlike.
Childlike, yeah, exactly.
There's a difference. Yeah.
And there's the childlike way that she processed stuff actually was a benefit, in my opinion, that she didn't get bogged down by all the things that we get conditioned by as we grow up, and we lose our connection with that childlike innocence and purity and
wonder
and genuine compassion and love. I feel like through the trials of life and the ups and downs and the roller coasters and the things we experience, we get almost like our hearts get almost like
hardened.
Yeah, hardened. I went through a whole phase where my heart was really hardened from like a heartbreak I went through, and I kind of went a bit numb. And I think you start acting more from your head and logic, and you just like go into autopilot, and you don't have that childlike perspective of the world where you're just excited. And it sounds like she had that, and that's why so many people were so
benefited from it.
Yeah, so impacted by her. So I feel like there's something we can learn there, is like to continue, make sure that we don't lose that childlike attitude that is actually so amazing, you know. As we wrap up and I let you go, what have you got any final words or for anyone listening? Like,
don't be so hard on yourself. Be nice to yourself, man. If there was a complete copy of you standing in front of you, maybe this doesn't work for everybody, but I like to imagine sometimes, like, if there was a perfect replica of me standing in front of myself, how would I talk to me? What would I think of myself? I'd probably be like extremely encouraging. But when we stay in our heads, it's like it's so easy for me to beat myself down and condemn myself. But if you can't be nice to yourself, how are you going to be able to fully accept other people being kind to you? How are you going to be able to recognize when somebody else is worth it to be in your life, you know, or important to have in your life? So stop beating yourself up. If you get in a fight with yourself and you knock yourself out, who wins? It's a weird question, but there's something in there.
I love it, bro. Yeah, I think being kind to yourself will lead you to be able to be kind to others. I totally agree.
This was really good.
It's been a great chat, man. It's been good to get to know you. I feel like we've become good friends in the last 3 hours. This
is some deep stuff to start off with.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so open and being vulnerable. And guys, go and follow Chaz. I'll link him below. What's your handles for people there?
Chaz Smith everywhere. CHAZSMITH. YouTube, TikTok.
Go and subscribe. Get
Instagram.
Ready for his Storytime series. And I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow Chaz and Miry's list and subscribe to this podcast for future episodes. Please leave a comment suggesting future guests you'd like to see on the show.